Why did God tell Abraham what he's about to do with Sodom and Gomorrah? Hello everyone, and welcome to No Crown in Heaven for Bible Knowledge, continuing study by verse by verse in Genesis. So today we Genesis chapter 18 verse 16. We have a lot to cover in the rest of this chapter. We'll see how much we can go. But why did God share what he's about to do with Sodom and Gomorrah and the judgment was Abraham? There was a reason behind God. He didn't have to disclose this information to Abraham. Abraham could have waken up next day and sees the smoke of the city, and that's about it. He would not have any clue what happened, but God has a reason to have this conversation with Abraham. So let's go into the passage and we'll see how much we can cover today. Genesis 18 verse 16. Then the men rose from there and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them on the way. And the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm doing? Since Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known him in order that he may command his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of the Lord, to do righteousness and justice, that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him." So here they rose. The men looked at Sodom and Gomorrah, or at Sodom here, and Abraham rose with them, and he's walking them. So this is the custom for hospitality, that when you have visitors, and they are leaving, you accompany them part of the way, and maybe until, like if you're in a town, until they exit the town or the city, or just a short distance, and then come back. So he is going with them. But it says, "And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm doing?" And he's giving a reason why he's not going to hide it. Because he said, since Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and he's speaking about all the nations will be blessed by him, which is indication of Christ. So what God is saying here is, I plan to save the whole world from their sins through the Messiah that's coming from the line of Abraham, from his descendants. I'm going to save them from their sins. Yet, tomorrow morning, a whole two city with the surrounding areas, we will be burned up for their sins. So God is giving the reason to Abraham why he's doing this. For two reasons. For the reason that's listed here, all the nations shall be blessed by him. The second reason is for us to know from this passage a lot of God's characters, God's attributes, and God's way of judgment is revealed in this passage. So it is written for us to know this and to see it, and it's revealed to Abraham because the Messiah is coming through his line, and now there is a judgment that there is no forgiveness of sin for these people, obviously. So God explaining himself to humanity about this judgment. So when somebody tells you, how come a loving God sent people to hell? The most common answer is God didn't send anybody to hell. They send themselves because they reject Christ, which is, a true answer, but there is more into it, and we're going to see that in this passage. I apologize for the tripping sound. We have chicks in the bathtub. I closed the door, but the sound is still coming out. So now let's read verse 19 and unwrap this verse. It's very important. For I have known him in order that he may command his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of the Lord to do righteousness and justice, that the Lord may bring to Abraham that he has spoken to him. This verse, it does actually give implication that the covenant is two-sided covenant, and Abraham should just teach his children and the household and his descendant to keep the Lord's commandments, do righteousness and justice, in order so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him. So it just say something different than what we learned in chapter 15 and the one-sided covenant, that Abraham cannot do anything or not do anything to void the covenant. But here it says he command his children and his household that they keep the way of the Lord to do righteousness and justice, that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him. So it just gives the implication that he has to do this in order for God to bring the covenant to pass. But that's not what it says. If you see the first phrase in the verse, for I have known him. So God knew Abraham, searches his heart, knew the future. God knows that Abraham will teach his children the way of the Lord and his household, and will teach them to do righteousness and justice. That's why he had the covenant with him. It's not that Abraham now has to keep up with what's said in here. It's that God knew in advance that he will keep up. I hope this is clear. The descendants didn't keep up with doing the way of the Lord, doing righteousness and justice, but the covenant was never voided. So God exists outside of time limitations, so he sees the beginning and the end. So God knows who Abraham was and how he would live his life. disregard the covenant, disregard if he has the covenant or not, he would have lived this way. Same with Job. Job lived this way. He was a righteous man before the Lord. And Enoch and Noah. So God's choice for Abraham, that's for his sovereignty. That's what he does. But it does not say that Abraham has, in order for the covenant to be fulfilled, he has to do this. It says because God knows he will do this, God is going to bring the covenant through him. So that's to be understood. So now God is choosing Abraham to be the father of faith. Done. But he is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, so he is going to communicate that with him to for us to know God's character, know how God acts, and for Abraham to understand as he's called a friend of God. So God is saying, I'm not gonna hide this from my friend Abraham. Verse 20. And the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grave, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I will know. So this is a confusing verse. We just said God's all-knowing and he knows the future. He knows the end from the beginning. And so he knows. He already knows why he's telling Abraham, I will know. It give implication God doesn't know. So here is what it means. God knows the future, the facts, the events, even the intention of the heart and the thought of every human being from the beginning to the end. He knows it before you're born. That's knowledge. And the I will know here is experience knowledge. In a way is it's performed. I'm going to explain. In Genesis chapter 15, when God gave him the covenant, and he was speaking with him about the prophecy about his children will go into Egypt, be in slavery for 400 years, and come back out. So in verse 16, in chapter 15, verse 16, it says, but in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. And we talked about the judgment of the nations, and God judges the nations. That will be the end of time, the end of the 1,000-year reign of Christ. That's going to happen there. But there is judgment of the nations throughout the history because their sin and iniquity will accumulate to come to a point that it cannot be tolerated anymore, and then God will judge them. So the Amorites would be judged by the nation of Israel coming out of Egypt on the way to the promised land. And God knows when that will happen. God knows when the Amorites' iniquity will be complete for that judgment. And so he's lining up all the event. So they will be judged after their iniquity is complete. So when in chapter 18 here it says, I will know, so I'm going to explain that in chapter 19, which will come in the future episodes. Briefly, the story is this. The two angels will go, Lot will meet them, take them to his house, and then the whole town, the whole city will gather around the house. It says every man, great and small, would surrender the house, and they will ask Lot to bring these two men out for them, so they will rape them. And that's what God is speaking about. I will know. So the evil and the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah has reached that point of judgment is due. Almost. They are almost there. And by sending the two angels to Lot, and they're gathering around his house, that was the completion of the iniquity of Sodom and Gomorrah to bring the judgment. So when it says, I will go and see if the cry out is actually, let's read the verse 21 again. I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me. And if not, I will know. So that was like God is pushing their last button to come to that completion of their iniquity, so they will be judged. God is bringing, we talked about hardening the heart, or we talked about God knows your heart, God knows the intention of your mind, your thought, and bring to your past things to happen in your life, people in your life, to bring what's in your mind out to surface and out to actions. So if it was good and righteous, you will be rewarded, and God will bring that. So he would bring your faith to a completion. Or if it was evil, God will bring your wickedness to a completion. So when you're judged, you have no excuse. We talked in the last episode about Sarah, how God brought her faith into perfection. So God knew her heart, although she laughed, she would have some unbelief, but God brought her faith into completion, perfection. So the same way, so God brings the one who believes, and God searches his heart to be conformed to the image of his Son. Or the one whose heart is wicked, God will bring him to a completion of their wickedness, so they will be judged. And that's important to know about God's character. He's just, and He's loving, and He's offering the way for salvation. And for each one of us, He searches the heart, bring the events in our lives to bring what's in our hearts out on the surface. Now, the outcry, what is that? It's the victims of the wickedness. So if in order for evil to be punished, they have to be a victim. So the victims of the result of their wickedness, they cry out to God for the injustice or the oppression or people being raped in these cities, or murdered or killed. There was violence. The Bible speaks of the violence that was in Sodom and Gomorrah. So that outcry goes out to God, even if the one who's crying, who's a victim, doesn't believe in God. But God is justice, and He's gonna bring justice to the oppressor or the wicked person. So God says, the outcry came to me. I'm gonna go and see if it was true by sending these two angels and see what they're gonna do with them. And the result was the judgment. The fire and brimstone, the two cities burned down. So now, on an individual level, God does the same. God will push my buttons, bring whatever my lust is stirred up, to expose my heart. He's also bringing the gospel in my path. So I reject the gospel, and I keep rejecting the gospel, and I keep getting into my sin until my sin is complete. Then there is no reason for me to live in the flesh anymore. He will take my life one way or another, and on the judgment day I will have nothing to say. On the other hand, I'm a sinner. The gospel come in my way. I rejected or accepted for some time. I ended up believing. I ended up repenting and being born again. So God will continue pushing my buttons to bring that faith and the unbelief in me. I believe, Lord, help my unbelief to bring that to a completion until, say, I am God Almighty, walk before me and be blameless. So He is going to bring me to be conformed into the image of His Son. I am predestined to that. And when we are in the glory, when we are with Him, He will make that to come to completion That's my personal opinion. The coming part is my personal opinion. Some believers die, most of the believers die before they become conformed to the image of Christ. But we are predestined to that. Whatever shortcoming we have in our own personal walk with the Lord, we are not already conformed to the image of His Son. My personal opinion that will come when we gather for the wedding of the Lamb, when we appear before the bema seat of Christ for the judgment of the believers, the rewards of the believers. So let's read Ephesians 5, speaking of marriage, but also speaking that the church is the bride of Christ. So Ephesians 5:27, that He might present her to Himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So some believers will die with a very miserable believers, as we have spoken in the past about Lot. So we can go ahead and watch that episode. A miserable believer who carnal and doesn't desire anything above, but live in the material life. So such a believer will go to heaven and they will receive very little of rewards, but you're predestined to be confirmed into the image of His Son, because Jesus, He might present her to Himself glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. Holy means complete. So He's going to bring us to completion in Him during that 7-year tribulation on earth, 7-year wedding of the Lamb, receiving His bride, the church. Within that time, we are being perfected. So we looked at Abraham and how God brought him, bring his faith step by step, appearing to him 4 times so far, and bring his faith to completion, bring Sarah's faith into completion. Now He's bringing Sodom and Gomorrah iniquity into completion, sending these 2 angels and what they tried to do to these angels. That what is talking in chapter 18 when it says, I will know. God knew already, but that's the action that will give the experienced knowledge, not the informational knowledge. God knew already what's going to happen, but the experience that they actually did this act completed their iniquity for the judgment. So if you're a believer or a non-believer and you're walking away from the Lord and you're continuing involved in whatever you're involved in, don't bring your wickedness to completion, because there will be judgment. Verse 22. Then the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. So all that the three men were together, the two angels and Jesus appearing in human form, human bodies, was all with Abraham at that time. Now the two men will leave the angels to go do their assignment to save Lot, and then God will continue a conversation with Abraham here. Or Abraham will strike a question. And Abraham, verse 23, and Abraham came near and said, right? That's Jesus. And he came near, like he came to Jesus like, Lord, can I get us to say something? Would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there were 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing as this, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be as wicked as the wicked. Far be it from you, shall not the judge of all the earth do right? So Abraham is speaking out of assumption, but God's action is out of knowledge. Suppose there is 50 righteous in the city. So he's probably like clueless what's happening over there. Maybe, I don't know. But verse 26. So the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place of their sakes. Again, if I find, it's not, God already knew, like, but it's like, he's talking to Abraham like on Abraham's terms. And again, like, if 50 people restrained from the act that they will try to do to these two angels, maybe that would have saved the city, or even 45 or 40, and the numbers will keep going down to 10. So we have that in the rest of the chapter. But when God says, if I find, he's talking in our terms, he already knew, and their action will expose their hearts. And I am pushing their buttons to expose their hearts. God does not make them do this, but God exposes their hearts by their lust against these two men, the two angels. So this is completely act out of their own free will, and God is just bring it to the surface to become from a lust or a desire to an action, so they will be judged. So when God said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous, that's according to what's going to happen. God knew it, but he still have to wait until they perform the act So then there will be the action. And then from verse 27, Abraham will like, oh no, maybe there is not 50. So verse 27, and Abraham answered and said, indeed now I who am but dust and ashes have taken it upon myself to speak to the Lord. Suppose there were 5 less than the 50 righteous. Would you destroy all the city for the lack of 5? So he said, if I find there 45, I will not destroy it. So and it's gonna go down to 30. It's gonna go down to 40, and then 30, and then 20, and then 10, until verse 32, the end of the verse. God says, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10, meaning if there was 10. So God knew. So we have to understand God searches the hearts, and he knew everything from the start. He's just bringing the action to be performed, so the judgment will be justified. Because if he judged them before their iniquity is complete, there will be, why you're judging them then? You know, it's like the police arrest somebody, he was about to commit a crime, and then the judge charged him with a crime that he did not commit, he was about to commit. That's injustice. That's not what it is. They have to commit the crime in order for the judge to charge them with the crime. And the same way. Verse 33, so the Lord went his way as soon as he had finished speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. Next day, it's going to be hell on earth in Sodom and Gomorrah. We'll go to that in next episode. Thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe. See you next time, and God bless you.